Wow, we've got some good news, we've got some big news, and that is that major changes are happening at Manchester United right now. New sporting director John Murta exit, decision made on Ten Hag's future, and more by INEOS in the coming weeks. James Duck has done an article outlining INEOS's plans, what they've learned from Nice, what they plan to do. Omar Berrada, despite not starting to summer, is already making some decisions and more. And these are changes that have needed to be made at United for the last 10 years. United have needed to change their recruitment. They've needed to do an overhaul of the whole club for a good 10 plus years. And they're finally bringing in sporting people, but they're bringing in people quick. INEOS are not here to muck about. They're not here to delay. They want to get deals in. They want to get deals in quick because they know once they change the footballing structure, once they get the right people in place, they can then go and address the transfer window, Ten Hag's future, and more. So hello and welcome back to Alice Talks Football. Welcome back to an update where we're going to be deep diving into James Ducker's article about the new sporting directors, who they could be, what's the plan, Omar Berrada and the decisions he's going to make, and more. Please do hit the like button, do subscribe. Let's get right into James Ducker's article and get into the first thing he said, which was this. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS Group is reportedly close to appointing a new director of football with 4 names on the final shortlist. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his INEOS team hope to appoint a new director of football at Manchester United within the next few weeks. Dan Ashworth, Julian Ward, Dougie Freedman and Paul Mitchell are thought to be among those whose credentials have been discussed. So this is just one of 5 major bits of the story, but interesting things that I can pick out from this story is, one, they're saying that we're going to appoint a new director of football in the next few weeks, which means a new director of football should be announced at Manchester United before Valentine's Day. This is Manchester United actually going there, getting the deal done, not dragging it on. We went out there, we got Omar Berrada, bish, bash, bosh, done. We're going to get the director of football sorted mid-February. It seems, bish, bash, bosh, done. How many times in the past would Manchester United leave this till May and then panic and bring in a crap director of football? INEOS have shown already by coming in that they're not mucking about. You know, CEO is here, done. Sporting directors coming in within the next few weeks. We're getting this done and we're getting this done early. We are doing an overhaul quickly. INEOS haven't even had the deal ratified by the Premier League. INEOS have only been here a month and they're thinking CEO, director of football, we're getting that done. And then when they're in, we can make decisions on Ten Hag, we can make decisions on transfers, we can make decisions on who's going to be the recruitment officer and more. And it said that Omar Berrada will have a say on the director of football he wants to work with, and names obviously linked to Dan Ashworth, Julian Ward, Dougie Freedman and Paul Mitchell. And I'm going to say this, I think the Paul Mitchell is not being looked at as a director of football. I think Paul Mitchell's been looked at as someone to do the final details on recruitment from what I've heard. Dougie Freedman is a name that some people might not be super keen on. Worked at Crystal Palace, but he's been crucial in a lot of the young players that have come in and developed at Crystal Palace. Eze Elise are standout players. He's done a really good job considering, you know, Palace and where he's been. I think Dougie Freedman is pretty good. The other name, Julian Ward, I'm not a big fan of, and that's not just because he worked at Liverpool, but he struggled in Michael Edwards' shoes. Michael Edwards was fantastic at Liverpool. I don't think Julian Ward quite hit the same, although he wasn't really there long enough to prove himself. And of course, the standout name, Dan Ashworth, who I think is Man United's favourite, and I think is us fans' favourite, because Dan Ashworth would be the best in that job. I think ideally we get Dan Ashworth in as a director of football and then Paul Mitchell to come in and work alongside Dan Ashworth on the recruitment side of things, because Dan Ashworth, Omar Berrada, Paul Mitchell is a crazy structure. When you think you've gone from like the Judges and the Woodwards to the Murthas and the Arnolds to Dan Ashworth, Omar Berrada and Paul Mitchell, that is the best of the best, and that shows that INEOS are serious. And it was said by James Ducker that INEOS have already identified the need for drastic changes to Manchester United's consistently failing recruitment setup, and they're ready to make those changes quickly. And the first big statement was obviously them bringing in Omar Berrada, and that was obviously done sort of a week ago, and it was said that INEOS wanted Omar Berrada in place first so he could have some valuable input into the choice of director of football, given their strong belief that the two men and the manager must have a shared vision and work as a coherent whole, which is something that there's never been at Manchester United. INEOS believe that Omar Berrada needs to have a say in the sporting director, and Omar Berrada needs a sporting director that he's going to work well with. And then him and the sporting director, Berrada and whoever the sporting director is, whether it's Dan Ashworth, will then decide if they can work with the manager and they share this shared vision. And it looks like Ten Hag's job is safe for now, but when the director of football comes in, his job might not be so safe, with it being said that Omar Berrada and the incoming director of football will ultimately be the ones to determine the fate of Ten Hag, whose future remains shrouded in uncertainty. I mean, there's a big question mark over Ten Hag's future. The feeling is probably that Ten Hag will be given to the end of the season to prove himself, and they'll make a decision then. But they've also got to factor in, do they want to work with him? Even if he does pick up form between now and the end of the season, Omar Berrada, Dan Ashworth, whoever it is, might say, you know what, he's just not the right manager for what we want to create, the style of football we want to create, not maybe the guy we want to work with. So a lot of it will depend on what Ten Hag does between now and the end of the season. I think they know there's so much work to do that sacking a manager doesn't solve the initial problem. But I also think they have to look at it and say, do we want to work with Ten Hag? Because we know that Ten Hag's very reluctant to give up power when it comes to transfers. And they obviously are not happy with the recruitment that's been done under Ten Hag, which isn't necessarily Ten Hag's fault. And they want to strip Ten Hag of power in the transfer market, which is something that apparently Ten Hag is not a big fan of. It's a must for him when he takes a job that he gets a big say in recruitment, in who they buy in the transfer market. And obviously, we know that INEOS do not rate Ten Hag's business and not happy with what Murta has done, and think that Ten Hag doesn't need as much power in the transfer window. That should be left to the footballing guy. So I think whoever the new sporting director that comes in is will be working with Omar Berrada to decide, is Ten Hag the kind of guy they want to work with, but also just assessing how Ten Hag does between now and the end of the season. Ultimately, I really hope that Ten Hag turns it around at United, goes on a winning streak, and Ten Hag is the guy to take us back to our former glories. But if INEOS decide that he's not the guy, I'm not going to be mad at that. At the end of the day, I'm just glad that it will be for proper footballing people making a decision. I still think players need to go before the manager. I still think lots needs to be done before changing the manager. But I'm at the point where any decision that Omar Berrada and Dan Ashworth or whoever the new sporting director is makes, I will be very, very happy with that. Diving into the next part of the story, it was said by James Ducker that INEOS believe they've learned valuable lessons from the Nice experience to date and hope to ensure they have a successful management team in place at Old Trafford, spearheaded by Berrada, the director of football and the manager. They want to have a nice management team in place. The biggest thing for INEOS when they came into Manchester United wasn't about spending in January and not thinking and doing a quick fix. Man United have been doing quick fixes for 10 years and we've not fixed anything. Quick fixes, panic loan deals for 10 years. They thought, ignore January, the season's over, we're not doing any more quick fixes. We've done that too much. Man United have sat there and thought, let's change the management. Let's change the recruitment team. Let's change the management team. This is appalling. And then once that's changed, once that's done, we will go ahead and think about what we're going to do with the manager, what we're going to do in the summer, because it is them bringing the staff. Then when they've brought in the staff, they have to decide whether Ten Hag can stay or whether they want to work with Ten Hag. And once they've decided Ten Hag's future, the three of them can then discuss, okay, so who's going to be coming in the summer? Who's going to be sold? Let's make a plan for what is probably going to be Manchester United's biggest summer yet. And it was said in terms of exits, while Ten Hag's exit looking a little bit likely at the moment as things pan out, with INEOS definitely having a look at other managers as they would be, but nothing's been decided yet. Murta exit seems inevitable. It is said that John Murta currently oversees transfer policy as United's football director with Ten Hag, but his roles and responsibilities will be downgraded in a shake-up unless he wants to leave the club altogether, which I think is the right decision, because I don't think John Murta is awful. John Murta was actually quite good at Manchester United before he got promoted into his sort of director of football, sort of technical director role. He was quite good with the youth setup and he did quite good work in the past, but he was over promoted because they didn't want to bring anyone new in, because the Glazers didn't want to give any power. And John Murta was pretty useless at his job. We could have got Højlund for 50 million. We ended up paying 64, raising to 72. We spent 85 million on Anthony, and people will blame Ten Hag for that, but John Murta approved that. We went and got Mason Mount when there was probably another midfield profile that's needed. And I think John Murta, I don't think he's the biggest problem at United, but I don't think he's suited to the role that he does at Manchester United, and I think significant upgrades are needed there as well. There are lots of other reports and news stories coming in when it comes into transfers. Manchester United apparently have been offered the chance to sign Hugo Ekitike on loan before the deadline as well, and maybe Man United making a late move at the end of the window for a striker, but I do think that any business is unlikely. There's reports that PSG want Rashford, but again, I think that is just a very easy report to write because of the Rashford drama that went on, and it's going to get people clicks and stuff as well. But it said that Omar Berrada will decide Ten Hag's future. The new sporting director is set to be announced in the next 2 weeks, and then a decision on Ten Hag's future will be made, and then on Man United's plans. I think the only concrete transfer link between now and the summer is Todibo, because we know that he's liked by INEOS, so we know that he's liked by Ten Hag, and we know that he's liked by the Man United scouts. But Omar Berrada and whoever the new director of football is might not rate Todibo. So again, I think every bit of transfer news right now is irrelevant, even if it's Todibo and Elise that seem kind of credible, because we've got to get that sporting director in place. And then once that is done, things will happen. The news will really heat up around March time, I think. Early March, I think the news will heat up ahead of the summer. But thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found it informing. Please do hit the like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. See you next time. Bye.